My name is Aliyah Rahman. I am 28 years old, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I am the daughter of immigrants from Yemen, a Muslim for as long as I can remember, and until recently, a nurse at Henry Ford Hospital. I remember waking up before dawn every morning, wrapped in my hijab, making coffee for my mother, and then rushing to work. My world was routine, disciplined. I believed that everything had an order, that God put everything in its place, even the suffering of the patients I saw every day. This was my way of finding peace in the chaos. But there was a silence inside me, a silence that not even my prayers could fill, an emptiness that grew every time I saw someone die alone, without answers. I would never admit it, but inside me there was a doubt. Why does God allow so much pain? On that frigid December morning, the cold cut through Detroit like a razor. I remember walking into the hospital with a strange twinge in my chest. I thought it was just fatigue. I had worked 3 shifts in a row, barely sleeping. But as the day wore on, the pain intensified. During shift change, I walked into the nurse's station, put my hand on my chest, and felt like something inside me was about to explode. My coworkers noticed my pale face and cold sweat. Within minutes, I was placed on a stretcher, hooked up to monitors, and taken straight to the exam room. I, who was used to taking care of others, was now on the other side. The doctor, Dr. Lewis, entered the room with a serious expression. "Aliyah, we found a brain aneurysm. It's large. We need to operate urgently." My world stopped. It wasn't just a diagnosis. It was like God had thrown me into a mirror, and all I saw was fear. As I was being prepared for surgery, I remember my mother holding my hand and reciting verses from the Quran, the same ones she had whispered to me when I was a child. She was crying, but she tried to sound strong. "Allah will protect you, daughter." But something inside me told me that tonight, I was going to cross a border that few cross. It was in this silence, the same one I had carried for years, that I closed my eyes. And when I closed them, my journey began. As I lay on the operating room gurney, my body felt there, but my soul felt far away. The faces of the doctors and nurses floated by as if in slow motion. I tried to focus on the voices, the lights, anything that would make me believe this was just another procedure. But deep down, I knew something much bigger was about to happen. As the anesthesiologist talked to me, asking me to count to 10, my mind filled with memories. My father driving me to school in a rusty old car, my grandmother making me cardamom tea and calling me Noura, my light, my mother's eyes on the day of my first shift. It all felt like a silent goodbye. "You're going to sleep now, Aliyah," the anesthesiologist said softly, and I did. What happened next was told later. During the surgery, my heart stopped for 3 minutes. The doctors fought with everything: electric shocks, compressions, screams. 3 minutes. For those on the outside, it's a short time. But for those on the inside, it's an eternity. What I can say for sure is that there was no dream, no soft images. It was abrupt, like someone had pulled the ground out from under my feet. I found myself outside my body, hovering over the operating room. I saw my own head split open, doctors sweating, rushing about. One of them shouted, "She's coming!" And that's when time broke. I began to be sucked into a thick, almost liquid darkness. There was no sound, there was no pain, just absolute silence. A silence that was not empty, it was alive. I felt as if something was watching me there, in that endless darkness. I tried to call out to God, out loud, in my mind. I recited the most profound verses I knew from the Quran, but they wouldn't come out. My mouth moved, but nothing came out. It was as if my faith had been ripped from my tongue. At that moment, a faint light appeared in the distance. Small, distant, but with something strange. It wasn't a warm light, it was cold, hard, cutting. And as I got closer, I realized that there was something or someone waiting for me. It was then that I felt for the first time a fear that was not earthly, a fear that did not come from the heart or the mind, but from the soul. An ancestral fear, as if something inside me knew that nothing would be the same after that. And that was just the beginning. That light wouldn't come any closer. It was as if I was being drawn toward it, slowly, dragged by a force I couldn't see, but that seemed to know exactly where to take me. My body, or what was left of it, was as light as dust, but my fear weighed a ton. The darkness around was so dense that it seemed to have form, and in the midst of that blackness there was an absence of time. There was no yesterday, no tomorrow, only an endless now, an eternity compressed into seconds. Suddenly, everything stopped. The cold light opened like a crack in space. I stepped through it, unwillingly. I was swallowed up. On the other side, I found something that I can't explain. It wasn't the paradise they taught me in my madrasa classes. There were no gardens, no sweet perfumes, no Arabic psalms floating in the air. There was a gray clearing, a place without color, but not without form. Twisted trees, a cold wind that didn't blow, but murmured, and in the center, a still figure, distant, quiet. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't respond. I was floating. My will no longer controlled anything. It was as if my very existence was controlled by another intelligence. Then I heard, not with my ears, but inside my mind, Aliyah, my name, called by a voice I didn't recognize, but that pierced me like an arrow. A firm voice, but without anger. Sweet, but with authority. It was as if every cell of my being was summoned to the presence of that entity. It was then that I saw the figure more clearly. It was not wearing a white robe. It had no wings. It was just light, but a light in human form. Its eyes were not eyes. They were like two suns looking into me, and when it took a step toward me, my instinct was to step back. I tried desperately to recite the Shahada, my profession of faith, La ilaha illallah, but the words died in the air. It wasn't that I had forgotten. It was like I wasn't allowed to say them anymore. The figure stopped a few feet away from me and spoke, without moving his lips. You don't know me, but I know you. My soul trembled. I didn't know what it was. Angel? Temptation? Trial? Whatever it was greater than anything my faith had prepared me to face. And then, without warning, it all disappeared. I was thrown backwards. I fell into a floorless space, a void even darker than the one before, an abyss that seemed to have no end. The speed increased, and when I thought nothing could get worse, I heard screams, human screams, moans, cries, thousands, maybe millions, as if the suffering of centuries was trapped there. It was like falling into an eternal lament, and at the bottom of that abyss, I knew. It wasn't the end yet. The fall seemed eternal. There was no ground. There was no end. It was as if I had been thrown out of creation, as if every scream that echoed in that abyss was a forgotten memory of humanity. A pain that was not just mine, it was everyone's. A suffering shared by souls who, like me, had perhaps asked too many questions, or perhaps had chosen not to hear the answers. The air was thick, but it wasn't air. It was guilt. It was shame. It was like breathing regret. Suddenly, I stopped falling. Not because something held me back, but because I had reached a place where even movement had died. A space where time did not move, neither forward nor backward. It was as if I were inside an idea forgotten by God. Around me, the darkness began to take shape. Silhouettes, first shadows, then faces, then eyes. Hundreds, thousands. They didn't blink. They just watched me. Human eyes, empty eyes, eyes that had cried all they could cry. And there, in those gazes, I saw something I never imagined I would see, my father's face. But not as I remembered it, not smiling, not protective. His face was etched, as if years of regret had been carved into his skin. He didn't speak, but his eyes said it all. That wasn't the way. I felt naked, not physically, but spiritually. Every thought, every judgment I had silently made, every time I had turned my face away from someone else's pain, it was all laid bare. There were no excuses. There were no justifications. That place was not the hell in the stories. There was no fire. There were no monsters. There was something worse, the raw truth about myself. And then, from the depths of this revelation, I heard voices, 3 distinct ones, whispers that called to me urgently, female voices. They were familiar. Aliyah, my granddaughter, my light, my grandmother's voice. I hadn't seen her since her funeral. She had died when I was 14, but that voice, with its thick Yemeni accent, full of sweetness and firmness, was calling to me now, out of nowhere, from somewhere outside that void. "Don't accept everything you see," that's what she said. And then another voice, younger, softer, whispered, "It's not the end, not yet." The space around me began to tremble, as if that reality was cracking. The darkness vibrated, and between the cracks, a new light emerged. This time, it was different. It wasn't cold. It was warm, soft, like a memory from childhood, like when my mother would tuck me in at night and tell me that Allah would watch over me while I slept. And then, that figure came back. The same light, the same eyes that burned and welcomed at the same time. But now, he wasn't far away. He was in front of me. He knelt down as if he wanted to look me in the eyes, and without words, he asked a question. "Are you ready to remember who I am?" My heart wanted to say yes. My mind screamed no. My soul trembled, because deep down, I already knew. In that instant, surrounded by darkness and light, silence and whispers, the impossible began to happen. He felt, not with the body, but with something deeper, perhaps my soul, perhaps something as yet unnamed. The figure before me, enveloped in warm, penetrating light, seemed to know me better than I knew myself. His eyes did not judge, but bore through. Every memory I had held, every emotion I had repressed, every thought I had hidden. They were there, exposed, like pages turned before him. "Are you ready to remember who I am?" This question echoed not only in the air, but in my gut, as if my entire being was shaken by a truth that had always been there, but that I had run away from out of fear, out of pride, out of blind faith in what I had been told, without ever asking why. It was then that voices began to emerge around me. At first soft, almost like a breeze, then louder. They were calling to me, not in English, not in Arabic. It was like a language that predated the world, more felt than heard. "Aliyah, daughter, time." I recognized my mother's voice, desperately praying for me in the hospital. It was as if the veil between the physical world and this place had been torn. I could feel her love pulling me back, but something inside me resisted. It needed to know who was that being before me. That's when other voices appeared. They were shouting my name, but not with tenderness, with fury, with panic. "Don't listen to her. You know the truth. That's a mistake." They were voices from my childhood, from religious leaders, from teachers who said that outside of Islam, there was no salvation. Voices that repeated that Jesus, one, was just a prophet, not the Son of God. Voices that now sounded to me distant, angry, confused. The figure remained silent, waiting, patiently, as if he knew that the truth did not need to be shouted. My eyes burned. I felt a pain that wasn't physical. It was the pain of standing before something eternal and realizing that I had spent my entire life afraid of him. Him or him. The light around the figure grew, and then he spoke in a voice that was melody and thunder. "I am the one who created you in love. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life." It was as if the entire universe had stopped to listen. My heart began to pound. My memories became jumbled. I remembered the Bible hidden in my Christian college roommate's locker, which I had once opened out of curiosity, but closed out of fear. I remembered the times I had heard about Jesus, and something inside me had been moved, but I pushed it away, as if it were a betrayal. Now, there was no more escape. He didn't force me. He didn't force me. He just forced me, invited. "You can choose to remain in fear or walk with me into truth." But before I could respond, a deafening sound broke through everything. It was like thunder crossing the heavens, another fall, as if someone had pulled reality out from under me. I found myself being sucked back in, away from the light, away from him. And this time, Tu shouted, "No, please, tell me who you really are." But he was no longer there, and what awaited me was worse than any hell I could imagine. I screamed, but my voice was not heard. There was no echo, no response, just a piercing, deep, absolute silence. The kind of silence that only exists after something sacred has been ripped away from you. I fell again, as if space itself was rejecting me. Everything around me was dark, but this time, it wasn't the emptiness that frightened me. It was the awareness that I had touched something eternal and have been torn from him. When I finally stopped, I was on my knees. The ground was cold, hard, like ancient stone. I looked up, and what I saw was terrifying. Before me, a plain stretched out into infinity, gray, lifeless, a place where hope seemed to have been forgotten. And there, in the distance, on the horizon, a figure, small, motionless. It was him, but something was different. This time, his light was not bright. It was as if he was waiting, but at a distance, giving me the space of choice, the space of awareness. I began to walk. Each step was a weight, as if memories and guilt were clinging to my legs. And as I got closer, I felt the atmosphere change. There was no wind, but my veil was trembling. There was no sound, but my heart was beating like a drum. It was at that moment that I heard voices, but not outside. In here, voices saying, "What if it's true? What if what we have always rejected is actually what we have always sought? What if Jesus is really who he said he was?" My eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from an ancient ancestral lament, as if my soul recognized something that my body and mind had always denied. The presence on the horizon didn't move. It just looked at me, and without saying a word, it loved me. He loved me with a look I never received on earth. It was at that moment that I realized that love didn't demand anything, just that I say it, yes. And if you've made it this far with me, stop for a second. Have you ever felt something that you couldn't explain? Have you ever had an experience that seemed more real than reality itself? If this touched you, please let me know in the comments. You don't have to understand everything right now. Sometimes we just need to let our hearts speak. Now take a deep breath, because what came next would change everything. I kept walking. Each step felt like stepping through centuries of silence, of denial, of fear. The figure on the horizon remained motionless, but something inside me knew. He had been waiting for me all along. When I finally got close, there was no more doubt. The same light that had enveloped me in the beginning now pulsed differently. It was no longer a distant, enigmatic presence. It was intimate. It was familiar, as if I had known it from before. He looked into my eyes, not harshly, but with such overwhelming depth that I had to look away, because in the reflection of those eyes, I saw who I really was. I saw the times I judged in silence, the times I helped someone just to ease my own conscience, the prayers I said out of obligation, not faith, the words I spoke but didn't live. It all was there. And then he spoke, without moving his lips, but his voice was the only living thing in that place. "I have not come to condemn you. I have come to show you the truth." My legs gave way. I fell to my knees like someone who no longer has the strength to sustain their own lie. I cried, not with physical tears, but with my soul. A cry that seemed to carry millennia of doubts, religions, fears, traditions, guilt. And he continued, "I am the way." Those words vibrated inside me like thunder. It was as if each syllable opened an old wound, and at the same time healed it. "I am the truth." That sentence tore me apart, because my entire life had been based on the search for truth, but always with barriers, with rules, with walls. And now, there, I saw it before me, incarnated, not as an idea, but as a person. I am life, and in that moment, I understood. Life wasn't just breathing, pulse, heart beating. Life was this look that restored me, this love that didn't demand merit, this presence that didn't ask me to deserve it, only that I would make me. I wasn't in a dream, nor in a vision. I was on a date, an encounter with what I have always desired and feared at the same time. I tried to ask, why me? Why now? But before my mouth could open, he answered with a gesture. He showed me my life, as if it were a movie. Scenes flashed before my eyes, moments I had forgotten, small decisions, silent choices, simple conversations. and in all of them, he was there. To the Christian driver who gave me a ride in the snow and prayed for me without knowing my name. To the coworker who gave me a hug on the very day I thought about giving up on everything. To the homeless woman who told me, "Jesus loves you," and I just smiled in disdain. He was, always, there. And then he did something that completely broke me. He cried. Yes, Jesus wept for me. Not because I was bad, but because I spent my life running away from the love that created me, the love that sustained me, the love that waited for me. And when he said, "You can go back, or you can come with me," my world turned around. Because there, for the first time, Twang didn't know what to choose. The choice was before me. Stay there, in that presence, in that love, in that truth that finally made everything make sense. Or go back to the world that broke me, to the pain, to the silence, to the doubt. But before I could respond, something or someone interfered. A shadow crept across the floor, subtle at first, then aggressive. A force that came not with screams, but with conviction. Voices began to whisper, old familiar voices, voices that seemed to come from deep within my soul, but they weren't mine. "You are Muslim. You cannot betray your faith. That's an illusion. You are being deceived. It's a trap." Times, his presence remained calm, steady, but something around me began to distort. The once calm clearing now became unstable. The trees creaked, the ground shook. It was as if my insides were being ripped apart. "I don't know what to do," I murmured, desperate, and that's when he reached out. "Trust. I have shown you the way, but the decision is yours." It was at that exact moment that everything collapsed. The shadow enveloped me like a whirlwind of voices, screams, and distorted memories. I was pulled back with such force that I felt my essence shatter. He reached for me, but my hesitation had already opened the door. And then I fell. But this time, not like before, not into the silent darkness. I fell into an abyss of living pain. It was like being swallowed up by all the guilt in the world, as if every person who chose pride over compassion, hatred over love, judgment over mercy was there, suffering endlessly. I saw faces, many, some familiar, others completely unknown, but all of them desperate, as if they were screaming for a second chance. And what destroyed me the most, no one answered. Each one screamed their own pain. No one heard the other. A sea of souls deafened by their own scream. A prison without bars, where the greatest punishment was to live eternally with the weight of what they could have been, and were not, and I was among them. I felt my chest burn, not with fire, but with pure regret. A kind of pain that has no parallel on earth. A longing not for what I had lived, but for what I refused. Of that look, of that voice, of that outstretched hand that I hesitated to take. With every second I was there, I felt myself becoming less Aliyah and more a fragment, a shard of myself, until in the midst of all this despair, a memory broke through the chaos. His gaze, the memory of that moment when he cried for me, and that memory, small as a flame, began to burn, to grow, to illuminate. Even in that impossible place, his love still reached me. I screamed, but this time, not for help. I cried out the name I had never dared to say before, that my upbringing had avoided, that my culture had denied, that my mind had rejected. Jesus! And in that scream, the abyss split. A crack of light cut through the darkness. The pain ceased. Time stood still. And again, I felt his presence. But now, something had changed in me. Because this time, I wasn't just curious. I was ready. My scream was still echoing as the crack of light tore through the abyss like lightning cutting through the night sky. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. Not a physical light, but a living presence. Warm, infinitely powerful, and familiar. The darkness did not explode. It retreated, as if he had consciousness, as if he knew that that light was not just light, it was authority. And then he appeared. Jesus. Not appearing dramatically, not with fanfare. He was simply there, as if he had never left, As if time and space were just veils he could pierce with a thought. His face was serene, but his eyes carried the depth of someone who had seen every pain, every tear, every doubt that ever existed. He knelt before me, not as one who bows down, but as one who bows down approaches the fragile, like someone who understands that sometimes what we need most is someone to find us on the ground. Without a word, he reached out his hand, and when I touched it, there were no flashing lights, no thunder. There was peace, a peace that did not come from outside, but rather sprang from within, as if every cell in my being had returned to its place, as if, for the first time in my life, I was complete. He helped me up. I was weak, shaking, but there was something new in me, a warmth, a strength, a love that wasn't mine, but that now enveloped me completely. "Do you want to live or understand?" he asked. This sentence took me by surprise. Like this, you can go back, reclaim your life, and in time, forget all this, or you can come with me and understand what it really means to live. My eyes filled with tears. For the first time, I realized that I never knew what it was, live for real. I survived. I breathed, I worked, I helped, I prayed, but I did not live. Living, as he said, was something else. It was recognizing that love is not a reward, but the origin. That faith is not an obligation, but a relationship. That God is not a distant judge, but a present Father. The answer was ready in my heart, but before I could say it, he placed his hand on my chest. And then I saw everything. I saw the earth from above. I saw time, like a river running endlessly. I saw people, thousands, millions, some trapped, some awakening, some repeating old patterns, some surrendering to the truth. I saw heaven, not as a distant place, but as an invisible dimension all around us, waiting to be accessed. I saw the heart of God beating through every human being without exception. I saw veils falling, religions crumbling, and the essence remaining. Love, forgiveness, restoration. And then he spoke, once again. "Are you ready?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, I want to understand." But before I could take another step, a new force pulled me. This time, from the world of the living. I heard sounds, beeps, screams. I saw artificial lights, my mother's face, doctors running, a tube being removed from my throat, and one sentence, "She's back." I woke up, confused, exhausted, but alive. And there, in that hospital bed, with my body bruised, my mind dazed, and my soul transformed, I knew the journey was not over. It had just begun. The first thing I felt was the weight of my own body, as if I had come back from a place where gravity didn't exist, and suddenly everything was pulling me down again. My eyes opened with difficulty. The brightness of the room blinded me. The high-pitched sound of the machines confused me. But there was something louder than all of that, the sound of my mother's voice. She cried, "Thank God. She's back. She's back." The room was full. Doctors, nurses, worried, disbelieving faces. Dr. Lewis was looking at me as if he were witnessing a miracle. Because, in a way, he was. I had been dead for 3 minutes. No pulse, no brain activity. They were about to declare total system failure when suddenly my heart started beating again. But what they didn't know is that I didn't come back alone. In the first few days, he could barely speak. Not because of the medication, but because each word seemed too small to try to explain what I experienced, what I saw, what felt. How do you tell someone that you have been outside of time, outside of your body, outside of everything that is understandable, and have found the truth with a face, with a voice, with love? My mother didn't pressure me. She just held my hand and prayed softly. But something in her eyes said she knew that I had seen something. I was discharged after 2 weeks. But I wasn't the same. My body was tired, yes, but it was my soul, my heart that was beating differently now. Something inside me had been rebuilt, and at the same time, something had been broken forever. Returning to my apartment was like stepping into a life that no longer belonged to me. The books, the clothes, the old photos. Everything seemed to echo a version of me that no longer existed. I spent nights awake, trying to figure out what to do with all that. Should I tell? But to whom? How could I tell my Muslim family that I had seen Jesus and that he was not just a prophet? How could I explain to my friends that the love I had experienced did not fit into any religion, but at the same time was more real than any dogma? I was silent for weeks, but the spirit within me didn't shut up. I began to write little passages, diaries, letters I never sent, drafts of prayers I didn't know how to finish. It was like relearning to live with a different vision, like walking with a new soul in an old body. And then, one morning, I dreamed about him again. He didn't say anything. He just held out his hand. And I woke up with my heart racing and the certainty that the time of silence was over. I turned on my phone. I opened the video app. I recorded with the front camera. My face was still marked by the weakness of the surgery, but my eyes were full of something new. I took a deep breath and said, "My name is Aliyah Rahman. I'm 28 years old, and I died. But what I experienced on the other side changed me forever. And if you have a few minutes, I want to tell you, not to convince you, but because maybe what I saw is what your heart has been searching for years." I stopped. I saved. But I didn't publish. Not yet. The world needed to know, but I needed courage, and courage would come in his time. The next morning was the longest of my life. The video was recorded, the message was said, the truth was recorded, but my finger was shaking over the publish button. I knew what was coming, the rejection, the shock, the judgment. My family, proudly Muslim, my community, faithful, conservative, rigid. My friends, some unbelievers, some devout, and me in the middle, bringing an impossible story. But something inside me was burning, a flame that wouldn't let me sleep. I knew I couldn't keep it to myself. And then, I pressed the button. Post. I closed my phone. I left it on the table. I took a deep breath, and I waited. The first few hours were calm, a few views, 2 or 3 comments. Then, like a rising tide, exploded. People started sharing, some with admiration, others with anger. "She's crazy. It is being used by Christians. That's disrespectful. Absurd lie. Another traitor to the faith." But in the midst of these digital screams, other voices began to emerge, quiet but sincere. I also saw Jesus in an NDE. I felt the same way and never had the courage to say anything. My grandmother had a similar vision before she died. "Thank you for giving voice to what my heart has felt for years." And then, a message from a woman named Maria from North Carolina. She said, "I've been a Christian for 60 years. I lost my son to cancer last year. I haven't felt anything since, until today. What you told me has rekindled my faith. Jesus continues to find his own." I cried, because in that moment, I understood. It wasn't about me. It was about him, about the love that found me, to find others through me. But not everything was welcoming. The next day, I got a call. He was my uncle, from the Islamic community in Dearborn. His voice was gruff. "What are you doing, Aliyah? Do you know what this means?" "I know," I replied calmly. "You will be rejected. You will lose everything." "Maybe, but I found something that is worth more than anything." I hung up. My heart ached, but there was no more room for lies. I started publishing more videos. Not doctrines, not dogmas, just stories, reflections, sincere questions, deep experiences. The views grew. People started reaching out to me. Muslims, Christians, atheists, ordinary, hurting people, thirsting for something real. A pastor wrote to me, "You are not a convert. You are a signal." A Muslim imam commented anonymously, "Something in your eyes made me cry." I started getting invited to podcasts, interviews, online shows. I turned them all down at first. Then I accepted one, with one condition. I didn't want debates. I wanted dialogue. I wanted heart. I told my story, without fear, without filter, without hate. And at the end of the recording, the presenter, a skeptical man, was silent for almost a minute. Then he said, "I don't know what you saw, Aliyah, but something passed through me just now." That was it. It wasn't about converting. nor about confronting. It was about share the love that saved me. And if this love touched just one soul, it would be worth everything. Today, I sit on the porch of my small Detroit apartment and look up at the sky with different eyes. No longer searching for answers in the clouds, no longer waiting for signs in the wind. Because now I know He is here, inside, nearby, always been. It's been 2 years since my near-death experience, and if I said things had gotten easier, I'd be lying. I lost friends. I was cut off from part of my family. I received threats. I was called a heretic, crazy, a traitor. And there were nights when I cried myself to sleep, asking God why He chose me for something so heavy. But every time I think about giving up, I remember Him. I remember the look that pierced me, the silence that healed, the hand extended in the abyss. And then I realize, I am not special. I am loved, as you are, as we all are. My faith today no longer fits into labels. I still love my roots. I still respect my culture. I still revere the journey of my ancestors. But my heart belongs to Jesus. And no, I don't follow Him because He promised me heaven. I follow Him because He loved me in my hell. I cannot explain everything I saw, nor all the sensations I experienced. Some things are too sacred to be put into words. But I can say with all my soul, Jesus is real. Not as an idea, not as a religion, but as truth itself incarnate. He came not to divide, but to reconcile, not to accuse, but to restore. He does not belong to a culture, nor to a people. He is of all. Today, I continue to speak to Muslims. Many come to me in secret. Some just want to understand. Others have seen it too. And in every conversation, there is pain, but there is also hope. I've talked to rabbis, priests, nuns, pastors, atheists, agnostics, and I've discovered that deep down, we're all hungry for the same thing, a love that knows us completely and still accepts us. And that's what I found in Him. The faith I carry today has no borders. It is not a map, it is a hug. It does not separate, it unites. It does not impose, it invites. It does not shout, it whispers. And if you're here, reading or listening to the end, I don't think it was by chance. Maybe you felt something too. A chill, an uneasiness, a memory, or just a hunger for something you don't yet understand. If so, listen to your heart. It may be being touched right now. I'm not here to convert you. I'm here to tell you that love is real, that it has a name, and that it's waiting for you, right where you are. I close my eyes, take a deep breath, and repeat the prayer that was born in me in that place where it all began. Jesus, I don't want to understand everything. I just want to be with you, because with you, I am. This is my story, and if it touched your heart, share it, not by me, but because perhaps someone you love is on the edge of the same abyss, and an outstretched hand can change everything. If you've made it this far, it's because this story touched something deep inside you. So I'd like to extend a warm invitation to you. Subscribe to the channel. Here, you'll find other stories like this one, real, profound, and full of meaning, that speak directly to the soul. And if this journey touched you, leave a comment below and write, "His love reached me." This shows me that you were with me until the end, and it also helps this message reach other people who may need exactly this today. Take advantage and leave your like, because that's what makes YouTube spread this video to more people. Click now on the next video that is appearing on the screen. The next story may be exactly what your heart is waiting for. Jesus loves you, and He is still finding His own.